Hello, everybody. It's October the 3rd, 2025, coming to you live from Tulsa, Oklahoma. And we've got an epic legend, a legend from the Pacific Northwest. And this guy's worked on more murders than most people in this country. And we're going to dive into that. It's going to be great. It's Cloyd Steiger, and he is well known in the homicide world. And he's been on a lot of things. He knows all the people that know all, he knows a lot of the people in the know. So this is going to be a fun episode. He knows several of the guests that we've had in here, from Cheryl McCullum to Jared Bradley and people like that. So it's going to be fun. And we have a lot of similarities, which is going to be fun to talk about. You may notice I'm wearing a John Brown polo here. And today we had a golf tournament in his name, and his family came out, his kids and his wife showed up. And if you didn't know, for those of the viewers that may not know, John Brown actually he passed away from his fight with cancer, and that happened. He ended up dying on August the 3rd. And so some people put this golf tournament together, and it was really a fun time. And special thanks to Quick Trip. Quick Trip is actually based out of Tulsa, and they took care of the bill for most, probably all of it, to tell you the truth. And we're really lucky to have them here. And so John's still heavy on our hearts, and we miss him and so forth. I'll tell you what, I had a couple of pre-records that Amanda and I. This is going to be episode number 71. Actually, I know it's a little out of order, but we did a couple of pre-records, Amanda and I, with a couple of different guests. And so we've already numbered those episodes. And so they're going to be coming out. And I thought, well, heck, I'm not doing anything Friday night. I'd rather do a live episode as opposed to not doing one. And I wanted to have Cloyd on for a long time. Actually, he and I know somebody mutually. He did some podcasts with 3PNR, which is another podcast with Adam. I think it's Adam Rodriguez and Adam R. And yeah, I see him shaking his head. So that's how I first got to know who Cloyd Steiger was. And when I listened to those podcasts, I was like, all right, I'm going to have this guy on one day down the line whenever I do have a podcast. But so just to tell you a little bit about him, he started with the Seattle Police Department in 1979. I mean, think back, 1979, I was 9 years old. So he wanted to be a homicide detective since he was a kid. He knew that he wanted to be a cop since 10 years old. So we have that in common. And so we've got a lot in common, actually. From both of us were an EMT, both of us were on the SWAT team, and both of us wanted to be a homicide detective when it wasn't normal, probably. And so he did that. He went on to work he started out on patrol like we all do. He went from there and he started out working in investigations, knowing that he had to do that to be able to finally get to homicide, which was his ultimate goal. And sometime in the middle, he ended up working in the sex crimes unit. So he's done a lot, and he worked in the homicide unit for 22 years, which is a very long time. And then he retired in 2016. But then he also continued on, and he worked for the attorney. I think it's the state attorney general's. He'll probably correct me here in a minute. And then he did a lot of homicide work there, and he's been a part of some other homicide groups. And most recently that I happen to read is that he's a part of this BTK task force, where they're actually looking to see if he is involved in some additional murders in Oklahoma, which I'm interested in hearing about that. Oklahoma, Kansas, and Missouri. So I think it's going to be a fun time. Let's bring Cloyd on. I don't want to waste any time. How are you? It's good to meet you face to face in person. So welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Nice.
Hey, Cloyd, tell everybody kind of how I touched upon it, but you can speak on it a lot more eloquently than I can. Tell everybody kind of what made you interested in becoming a police officer from the beginning.
Well, I mean, it was like all kids. It was TV shows, Adam 12, and Police Story and all that stuff. That looks like a pretty cool way to make a living, and that's why I decided I think that's what I'm going to do. And I told my parents I was going to, yeah, but I never wavered, and I read every book I could, nonfiction book about how to become a police officer, and I in my school libraries, public libraries, and worked my way. And then all the way through and went to school and majored in criminal justice. And then when I was 20 and a half, I picked up the phone. I called the Seattle Police Department and they said, "Are you hiring?" And I said, they go, "Yeah, we are." So they sent me this application along with a test pack. It was like 150 pages. And so I basically memorized all 150 pages. And then I wasn't even 21 yet, not even old enough to get hired, but I took the test, and it was a weekend test. About 2,000 people tested. And I thought, oh man, there's no way I'm getting hired here. And then card in the mail a little while later said, "You're number 13 on the list." Scheduled me to come in, background investigator, and that's what happened. Next thing I knew, I was standing in a uniform and running a patrol car.
And so when you started with the police department, as I think it's pretty much customary across this country, where everybody starts in uniform out in the patrol car.
Right.
And so you did that, and you worked the streets, and you worked in what was that area called? Because it's a relatively rough area.
Yeah, it was Rainier Valley. Yeah, we used to call it back then. It's all gentrified now, of course. And I have a son that works that area right now. And I said, we didn't have Starbucks in here when I worked down here. We used to call it the Rainier Valley Knife and Gun Club.
Because two of your three kids actually, you have two kids that are actually Seattle cops. Is that right?
Well, my oldest isn't anymore. He left and moved to Arizona and is doing other things now. But my middle son is. Yeah.
Okay. Does he just incidentally? Does he aspire to one day be a homicide detective himself?
Well, I don't know. He did a temporary duty in sex crimes, and he liked that. So I don't know. I haven't really talked to him about it lately.
Yeah. So you go from there, and but basically, what
a wild time. Go ahead.
He's had a wild time. I'm sorry, you cut out. You said he had a wild time.
Oh, yeah, he's had a wild. He's been in a shooting and all kinds of stuff going on down there, But yeah, it's kind of leveled out right now. But
well, when you got on in Seattle, and I mean, are you from that area essentially?
Yeah, I grew up there. I grew up in the suburbs. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So you get on there, and what was kind of your journey?
I just kind of, when they put me in Rainier Valley, I'd never even been in Rainier Valley in my life, so I didn't know my way around at all. Mm-hmm. It was like foreign to me. But my journey was basically, I enjoyed being a patrol officer. I had a good time. I worked 8 at night to 4 in the morning, and I just rolled with it for a while. And it wasn't until later I was working in a different part of town. I thought, well, if I'm ever going to do this detective thing, I better get moving. So I took the detective's test and got hired, and I got on the eligibility list. And then my first job was at the East Precinct, just as a precinct detective, a generalist, doing a lot of property crimes and things like that. And did that for 2 years. And then I thought, well, I'm not, some of those guys stay in that job forever. That wasn't going to be me. So I just decided the next likely step was into sex crimes. And I'd had a sergeant who was in the precinct detective with me that transferred to sex crimes. So I got hold of them, and next thing I know, I'm in sex crimes. Did that for 2 years, and that's a sweatshop. A lot of stuff going on that, and a lot of cases. I learned a lot of good stuff about interrogation and handling, bad people. And basically, at that time, sex crimes had the office right next to the homicide unit, and so they saw, I'd be bringing people in handcuffs all the time. And finally, one of the sergeants comes over and says, "Do you want to work homicide?" And I went, and I said, "Oh yeah, sure." I said it that way, and so I'm going, "Hell yes, I want to work homicide." And next thing I knew, I got orders. I was in homicide.
Was there any particular cases that kind of made you interested in homicide back when you were a kid? Because you were thinking about doing that when you were much younger.
Much younger, yeah. I mean, there was, there were the Ted Bundy cases and stuff up here. I'd read about that, hear about that, other stuff, and I just, I don't know. I read books about it and true crime stuff. I don't read that crap anymore, but I used to. Yeah. And that's a good job. I want to do that, and so I did. And and I started working homicide, and it was a wild ride.
Yeah. So when you finally get to homicide, you get there after 2 years of working in sex crimes, and then when you started there, tell me kind of like what it was like for you when you first started into homicide.
Well, you're the newbie in the unit, so you don't have any. you just go where you're told to go and do what you're told to do. And that's what I did. Much later, for years, I was the senior guy in the homicide unit. So I didn't have to tell anybody anything, not even my commanders. They would come to me and ask what they should do in certain situations. But yeah, I just did what I'd get the phone would ring in the middle of the night, and I was up and out and to work, and sometimes working 18 hours after the phone rings, straight through, maybe even longer. I mean, I think the longest I ever worked in one solid stretch on a call is like 34 hours of continuous work, no breaks. And I mean, breaks. I mean, I have a cup of coffee or something, but I worked 34 hours straight through, a couple times actually. So, because once you're on the hunt and then on the trail, you can't just break away. You got to stay with it, right? And I was pretty successful. I had a really, really high. My partners and I had really high clearance rates. As a matter of fact, my last 2 or 3 years in homicide, we had 100% clearance rate every time. So, but we worked our asses off. It was a grind, and it's blood money. When I first got in there, one of the older guys said to me, this is a great job, but I want you to know it's blood money. Because and he was right. It was blood money because I mean, it takes a lot of stuff away from your personal life and your family life. How many things I missed because I was working, and but I always made, like, I had my boys were in high school, and if I was working late on a case and they had a high school football game, I would leave and go to their game, watch it, and then go back to work because that was a priority for me. And you got to do stuff like that, make your kids a priority. You have to have interests outside of work. Although I didn't have a lot of time for that, but I did. And so, I mean, it was wild. I did just about every type of murder you can think of. I personally was primary on 2 serial killer cases, and I arrested both of them. And it was a great job. I had a great career.
Yeah, when you first got into the unit, was it like they were like, "Come on, kid, let me show you how to do this," or was it almost like learning on your own kind of a deal?
No. Most of them were pretty good. There were some guys there that were so old school that I'm thinking, what are they doing? I didn't say anything, but I'm thinking that, what are they doing? Because they just were kind of going with the flow and not really. They were just old dogs, and they would soon retire, and they weren't as. I was a fly by the seat of my pants kind of guy. Some of those other guys were checklist guys. Okay, first we do this, then we do that, then we do that. And the problem with that, it doesn't allow you to veer off as circumstances change. So I didn't become that guy. I would be running. I always say the best times I ever had is when I get a call of a murder and I get there and the person's dead and I don't know who the victim is. I don't know what happened. Don't know anything. But then 15 hours later, I'm booking the suspect into jail after getting a confession from him. That's the best. That's the fun. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, I Sunday night, I got called in on a murder. I was the lead on it. And so I can relate a little bit, but I spent the next 24 hours at work and which was, which I'll tell you what, Cloyd, it's brutal because probably the worst time to get called out on a murder is at 10 p.m. right before you go to bed. And I was like, oh my gosh, I already know what's going to happen to me. And I'm still recovering on it. That was Sunday night. And I'm still not the same.
Yeah.
Really.
Well, that's one of the reasons I left. When I was younger, I could recover quickly, but when I got older, it would take me 3 or 4 days to recover. I was on call 1 week and I got called 4 nights in a row, all between midnight and 1 a.m., all the good murders. And it was like, matter of fact, on the 4th night when the phone rang and I looked at the clock and it said like 12:37, I picked up the phone and I said, "Are you kidding me?" And my sergeant said, "Well, good morning to you too, Cloyd."
So kind of tell me,
get sleepy again.
Well, tell me, for me, I'm just kind of, actually, ladies and gentlemen, this is fun for me because this is like me going to school, really to listen to what he's got to say. And so for your unit, how many detectives did you guys have? How many murders, and how did you guys determine who was going to be up? Kind of a deal.
Well, yeah, we had like 22 detectives working in 2-man teams. And there was a roster, next up. And if you're next up, we used to have there was a skull on a stick. And if you're next up, they'd hang it on the cubicle where you and your partners. So everybody knew that's who's next up for a murder. And then, whenever it happened, wherever, whenever, you're getting called in. We also had standby detectives. You take a week where you may not be your case, but you're going in to help. If that's when I got the 4 in a row. They weren't my cases, but I went in to help because I was on standby. Because it takes more than 2 detectives at a homicide scene. It takes a bunch more if it's in the middle of the night. But during the day it's not a problem. But but they never hardly ever did murders during business hours. They're always in the middle of the night.
Yeah, and they're usually over really stupid reasons.
People get stupid things.
Yeah, most of them are not Dateline mysteries. Trust me, they're really over ridiculous things.
Oh yeah.
So you end up starting there, and you're there for a couple of years, and you're starting to get an idea as to what you're doing. And and it was you worked there for 22 years, Cloyd. Is that kind of the norm? Is that kind of the norm? I would think that's really. I mean, I'm just a little over 16 years, and it's pretty rare especially with the younger generation of today.
Most people 10 to 15 years, and that's it. Because, well, first of all, it's hard to get into homicide usually, and so the people that are later in their career, so they're not, they're going to retire. People, I mean, sometimes it happens where people transfer out of homicide, and go somewhere else. Usually that's because they don't feel that they know how to do the job right. And they just say, I can't do this job, or something bothers them. They don't like getting called out all the time, so they'll leave. Not very many, though, a few here and there. But 22 is a long time. I mean, there were a few people that in my career that were close to that or around that. But like I said, the last several years I was there, I was a senior guy in the whole unit. I had not only did I have seniority over everybody else, both in the unit and in the department, I had seniority over my sergeant, my lieutenant, my captain, and even the bureau chief. So I mean, I'd been. You mean
on the actual department?
On the department, my time on the department. Yeah, I had seniority all of them. Yeah.
So as you were there and you're working there, tell me some of the things that you found to be really good attributes for the detectives that were in the unit that were really good, and some of the things that you kind of saw that weren't really that good.
Well, first of all, observation is the most important thing. Being able to observe, go to a scene, look, and just stand there and look at it and read the scene. It takes a while before you're able to do that. But by the end, I could sit and tell and have a pretty good idea what happened. And then also, you have to have a really good memory and a quick wit, because interview and interrogation is a very important part. And I taught interview and interrogations for like the last 6 or 7 years of my career, not just to homicide detectives, but to detectives everywhere, and not just in Washington State either, around the country. And the thing is, you're talking to these guys, and these things might last 3 or 4 hours, and you ask one question one way and he gives you an answer, and then an hour and a half later you ask the same question in a different way and they give you a different answer. And you got to be able to remember, and that's not what you said earlier. Yes, it is. No, it isn't. This is being recorded. You want me to play it back for you? And the reason is, when you're telling the truth, you can say the same thing over and over and over again. But if you're lying, you're throwing out stuff at the spur of the moment, and you don't remember what you said, and you forget it, and then you're trying to guess what you said later. And that was the big hook, pointing out all the lies or ridiculous stories and things like that. So those are the things you need.
Yeah, that's where the money is. Actually, we don't solve cases off DNA and fingerprints.
I mean, they help, but
they do help.
But my interview interrogation, it was my specialty. I remember, speaking of DNA, though, I had a brutal murder. This case has been on Investigate, Discovery, Oxygen, and like 4 different shows highlighted this case. And every time they call me, they want to do the guy. I said, this has been done 3 times before, right? But anyway, this guy, they butchered this retired Navy guy for his coin collection and just literally almost cut his head off. And we got the guy accidentally cut himself, so we got DNA there. We didn't know whose it was. And this guy had no criminal history, so he wasn't in the system. Yeah. He wasn't the primary person, but he was helping. And I had talked to him before this and got some stuff from him. We got the thing back. He's our guy. And it said the probability of this being not him is 1 in 54 quintillion. Wow. So the thing is, this guy, Charles, and I sat him down, I'm talking to him, and I said, that's 1 in 54 quintillion, Charles. That's 54 and 18 zeros after it. I said, how many people have lived on the planet live on the planet Earth right now? 7 or 8 billion. How many people do you think lived on it in the entirety of the planet's history? Maybe a few more billion. You still got a whole bunch of zeros to account for.
Yeah.
And I said, Charles, there's a legal term for the situation you find yourself in today. He goes, there is. I go, yeah, you're and he ended up confessing, and so that was when we had DNA. But I'd already talked to him and got some of the previous story before, and he told me, and he didn't remember what he told me before, and he's saying different stuff at the beginning before I dropped the DNA bomb on him. So,
well, what's really fascinating to me, Cloyd, is that in the span that you worked in homicide, just homicide, right? You started in homicide in what, 94? Is that when 94, it was, or 90?
Yeah, 94.
Yeah. So you get into homicide in 94, and you were there till 2016. There was a lot of different, DNA was just, OJ had just happened in 93, 94.
When I started, to get a DNA sample, you needed a biological sample the size of a quarter. Now you only need a few cells. And not only that, there was no database. There was no CODIS where they can just pull it out of things. And to get them to you had to have a guy you were pretty sure did it before they'd even compare it to him. They wouldn't just randomly compare it if you asked them to. You had to have a reason. And it was huge, all the changes. That and the collection methods. You talk about Jared Bradley, the MVAC, what a huge, of course, that was after I left homicide. I was working at AG's office, but what a huge step that was. You get DNA off of all these different surfaces you can never get them before. And then what you can do with them, and like I said, a few cells, you can get a DNA profile.
Yeah, I just did a presentation in reference to the MVAC for an organization that basically donates money to the police, and we just purchased one, and they just got done validating it. So there's going to be some killers they should be sweating it, because we're going to solve some cases. There's no doubt about it.
The thing is about this also, these agencies have these 30, 40, 50-year-old cases just sitting in boxes on their shelves. Pull those things down. If you got the evidence, go have them MVAC'd, because they're knocking them dead. They're finding DNA on stuff that's old, but you got it. Somebody's got to take that thing down and look at it again. That's huge. It used to be a 50-year-old case was unheard of, but now it's common.
Well, Jared was telling me there's 2 cases that they've solved with the MVAC that go back to the 50s.
Yeah, exactly.
And I was like, oh my gosh, that's awesome. So and the technology that exists today, Cloyd, I know that you probably said, I'll tell you what, that murder I just got on Sunday, holy cow, 2 years ago, man, we would have been really, really hitting our head up against the wall. But, with the flock cameras and stuff, and I don't know if they've got them up in the Seattle area or not, but those flock cameras are game changers,
Yeah. Well, that's the thing with cell phones, also tracking cell phones and cameras. I forgot I was going to tell you, ask me about good things and bad things. So the bad thing, and I've seen this too, the worst detectives in the world are the ones that go to your scene and decide what the answer is and only look for evidence that supports their thesis. You got to go, if you have you can have a working theory, but if all of a sudden the evidence points you left, you got to go left. You got to follow the evidence and throw your theory out, and I get this.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to be open-minded and, not get tunnel vision for sure.
Right.
Because then
people
you're going to get into
they know
trouble.
what happened, and but they don't sometimes.
Right.
I remember the case of some people I work with where it was a terrible case. Guy bound up, killed, and the next day we got a phone tip of what it was, and I told the detective, "Oh, that's not what it was. It was this." A year later, it was exactly what that first phone tip said, and he'd wasted a year following all what he thought happened instead of what really happened. That's terrible. That's
nope. He locked himself. Cloyd, if you can hear me, you may have to click on that red box with the arrow down below. And if you click on that red box and then come back in on that link that I had sent you, it'll bring you back in. And hopefully he's able to hear me. Sometimes this happens. I'm going to type to him real quick. I think this is interesting stuff, ladies and gentlemen. This is kind of my thing. I like talking I put a little survey out there on my YouTube page, and I asked what people really wanted to see. And the winner was Homicide Detectives. They wanted to hear from these homicide guys. Sorry, give me a quick second. So anyway, we'll wait for Cloyd to come back in here, but he's right. He's absolutely right. You know, all of these cases are basically, each one of these cases, good, he's clicked out, so he'll probably come back in here in a quick minute. All of these cases, there's a different story. You have different cast of characters, different personalities that you're dealing with, different scenes, and on and on and on. And you really need to keep an open mind as to what's going on and how to go forth on this and so forth. But yeah, the case that I just recently, oh, good, he's back. Great. There he is.
Yeah.
All right.
I don't know what happened.
It happens from time to time. No worries.
Yeah.
So you were saying something about, getting tunnel vision and going down this road, and that's kind of the bad thing too.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'll tell you something that I've kind of noticed over the years, Cloyd, is that I've always, number one, you'd said it's really hard to get into homicide, and I'm going to agree with that. But back when I applied for the unit, and I don't know, when I applied for the unit, man, there was like 10 or to 12 to 13 just all-stars that would apply for one spot.
Right.
And nowadays, man, you're lucky to get 1 to 2. And quite frankly, I really hate it when I hear that people are going out and trying to recruit people, because I'm like, we shouldn't have to recruit people. No. I mean, they either want to be in here or they don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, we shouldn't have to twist people's arms.
Recruit people, and I know this person, and they're good guys and everything, but they're not hard chargers. The thing is, if my thing is, if with supervisors, I never asked my supervisor what I should do. I just did it. If I need direct supervision, I shouldn't be here. Right. I was self-motivated. I made a lot of my own cases that weren't even, I didn't even get called. I had snitches that would call me and tell me about somebody trying to have their whole family killed. And so I just run with it and, do wires and everything and make the arrest. And I didn't wait for a call. And that's what you got to do. You got to be motivated.
Yeah, actually, I do the same thing, Cloyd, and that's not always been embraced by previous supervisors, I can promise you.
Yeah. Well, most of the time, I don't know about it in Tulsa, but in Seattle, most of the supervisors were never homicide detectives themselves. That's why don't go ask
here too.
He doesn't know. He does. You know more about this than he does. Don't ask him. Right. Tell him what you're doing. Sure, keep him on board. Let him know, but don't ask.
Yeah. I rarely. I'll let him know when we're getting really close.
Exactly.
Kind of a deal.
We had this lieutenant one time that came in, and he was brand new. He'd never been in homicide. He'd been a gang unit detective for a little while, but we get called to a murder in the middle of the day, and we're in this house, and he's standing there pointing and giving people orders. And what I was doing, I stopped and I just stared at him. I didn't say a word. I just stared at him. And he went, "Oh, I guess I've been put in my place," and walked out. Yeah, because you've never worked a murder. We know what we're doing. We don't need your instructions. That's the thing.
Right.
Another thing about homicide detective you need is the ability to testify good in court. And I love testifying in court. I always say it's a battle of the wits, and they came unarmed. It's just like sparring with high-priced defense attorneys. I don't care, because the facts are on my side, right? You can't change the facts. And so I enjoyed testifying. And, they go, "You rushed to judgment." No, I didn't. And, I followed the evidence. And then I say, if I'm driving in a town I don't know, and I see a sign that says freeway next left, I don't go, "I wonder if it's down here," because you follow the evidence. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. You've probably sat case agent on many a homicide cases. I'm guessing. Where you sat through the whole thing, and I've done that. I've done that a number of times too, probably more than anybody in my unit. And I'll tell you something. We suck at it as cops, as far as testifying by and large. When you watch this uniform guys and stuff, and for whatever reason, and I don't know if it's like that in Seattle or not, but they don't spend any time, little to no time, of actually teaching them how to testify when they're in the academy. And it's kind of a shame, because it's such a huge part of what we do. And today's a different time, because today, that jury, they just don't believe everything coming out of a cop's mouth anymore. Things have changed,
the important thing I've always found to tell people is answer the question they asked you. Don't offer anything else. And sometimes they ask stupid questions and you answer it and they get mad. Well, you asked me this. This is the answer to that question. Do you have another question? You know?
Right.
Yeah.
So you're doing this. You do this for from the time you go from that period to when you retire, and you ended up spending, what was it? Was it 36 years at the Seattle Police Department,
36,
roughly?
yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
36 years.
And then what did you do following that? What did you end up?
I went to we have a unit, the state in the Attorney General's office, like you said, the state Attorney General. They have a unit called HITS. It stands for Homicide Investigation Tracking System, and it's kind of like VICAP, but for Washington, Oregon. We get data on most of the investigators that work there are retired homicide detectives from different agencies around the state, and then we have some analysts. And every murder that happens, one of the investigators goes to that police department and gets the information. It gets entered into a data bank. And we also, like a lot of smaller departments who don't have many murders, when they get one, we offer our help. We'll help you with this, so one of our guys will go be there, not to take over the case, but just to give to kind of coach them through this case and what they need to do. Or if they have a cold case they need reviewed, they send us the file and we give it to 3 or 4. I always took one myself, detectives, and we rush through it. Then we have a meeting and talk about it, and we write a letter of recommendation, send it to the agency. So that's what that was about. And I worked there for 4 years.
That's cool. And I kind of went a little bit too quick. Let's go back real quick to your homicide days. How many cases were you the lead on, if you remember?
Well, I know when I retired, I one of those guys that counted. But when I retired, they had somebody count, and I had worked on 238 murders. I wouldn't necessarily lead on all of those, so I don't know the lead. I would guess I was the lead on about a little less than half of those.
Yeah.
So, but I worked, did work on 238 murders. So
out of all of those murders that you were a part of in some way, shape, or form, was there one that stands out that you would consider that career case?
This is funny, Mitch, because I asked people, I've had like 10 career cases. Okay.
Yeah.
Serial killers, or, there was this one second serial killer. I got called 2:00 in the morning to this address in the central area where gangbangs happen all the time. I get there, there's 2 dead black males laying in the street, and I'm thinking, oh God, it's a gangbang. And I got very few gangbangs. It's just the way the rotation came up. I always got interesting or weird murders, Ends up that was a serial killer, and he killed 3 in Seattle, then went to New Jersey and killed a guy in New Jersey. I had to go back there to testify. That was a good case. But the other thing is kind of late in my career, we had an officer that was ambushed and killed. He was an FTO, a field training officer, and he had a female student officer in the driver's seat, and they were parked on a residential street talking about a traffic stop she just made, when a car pulled right up next to him and with a .223 rifle fired like 10 rounds into the car. She ducked, and it scraped the back of her vest, but it hit him in the head 4 times, and he was dead. And so that case, it happened on Halloween. Actually, it was a Sunday night at 10:00. I got called in, and I worked 18 hours a day, every day, until that Friday when we made the arrest. And then we made the arrest, and I sent a couple guys out to watch his car, and he came out, and they got in a big shootout with him and stuff. And that was a good case. That was a big case. That was, I just say, it was a police officer ambush murder before that was cool. Now everybody's doing it. But and I would literally just lay on the floor under my desk and sleep sometimes. And I have an RV that I kept at the police range. I'd go down there and sleep for 3 or 4 hours and get up and go right back to work, And so, that was a big case and a long case. And I've had to give presentations in that case around the country too.
Yeah. That sounds really horrible, honestly.
Yeah.
And we're fortunate here. We've only had one cop that's been killed in the line of duty since I've been in homicide, or really since I've been on the department, actually. So which we're really lucky.
I've worked on three officer murders. That's the thing in my time. Wow. Yeah. And there have been, in total, there's like 60, because there's a wall in headquarters when we walk in with other names. There's like 60 names up there.
Hey, just out of curiosity, how big is Seattle, and how many police officers roughly do they have there?
Okay, you mean the city of Seattle? Well, the
Yeah.
Seattle metro area is about 2.5 million. Not that many. About 1 million live in the city
Area.
itself, but everybody
Yeah.
else works there and goes to events there. And the police,
Yeah.
well, that's a bad question because the police department is supposed to have like 1,400 or 1,500. Last I heard, they have like 900 or 800 because of the big exodus in the last couple of years. They're trying to get that back up. Yeah, they're trying to get that back up to 1,400 or maybe 2,000 is where it should be. We have the lowest police officer per capita rate in the nation.
I did not know that.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Now we do. I mean, we didn't used to, but we do now because everybody was leaving because all the BS that was going on here, and this is not a very police-friendly city. I mean, by the city government.
Right.
Yeah.
So did you run into difficulties with respect to cases? Were you getting a lot more where they needed ridiculous, unrealistic expectations for you to bring them, for them to file a case? Or
no, the thing is, not only I was well known at the department, and I was well known at the prosecutor's office and by judges. So I would bring it in. I never got up. They might say, "Hey, would you try to get this?" Okay, yeah. Nothing unreal. Or if it was unrealistic, what are you talking about? There was, I mean, one time there was a case. It was a pretty serious case, and this prosecutor, who I knew was a friend, she kept asking, "Get this, get this, get this," and her name was Kristen. She became a judge later. I looked at her and said, "Kristen, you'll never get more evidence of guilt against this guy than you have right now. And right now you have about 5 times the amount of evidence you need." She was just so nervous. We went to trial. The jury was out for like an hour and convicted this guy, so it was no big deal. I would just call BS sometimes. And, most of the time they listened. I didn't have any problems with them,
Yeah. So
that's the other thing. We had a thing here where when you get called to a homicide, the prosecutor's office has a homicide unit too, and one of whoever their next guy up would come to the scene at the time, and that makes it a lot better because they're seeing it, they're smelling it, they understand the case better than somebody just reading about it a couple of days later. They understand and they're involved in it right from that moment through the investigation. We were all friends. They aren't directing an investigation. But they're just there with us, and we talk about it, and then they take it to trial, and that was a great way to do it.
Yeah, I think that's actually brilliant, and that's something that I've only seen that done a couple of times, where somebody from the DA's office actually showed up, and one of them was when I actually called him and said, "You need to get here. I want you to see what I'm looking at."
Yeah.
And
exactly.
that way. Yeah, that's good. I'm glad you mentioned that.
It's
so
routine,
let me ask.
Yeah.
Do what?
It's routine. I mean, that's the way it always is. That's the protocol.
It makes great sense, really.
Yeah.
Hey, let me ask you. And I think I know your answer to this. Hey, it seems like there's a lot of wacko, crazy, freaking serial killers, number one, and just really weird homicides that happen up there in the Pacific Northwest.
Right.
Is there truth to that? And is there a reason why?
I get that question about serial killers all the time. I don't know if it's true. Because, I mean, there are a lot of serial killers in other places. It may be true, but I don't know. There have been a lot here. As far as wacky and weird, that is true. I can tell you that. On that serial killer I was telling you about, I had to go back to Newark, New Jersey, because that's where the guy did we did it in West Orange, New Jersey. He killed another guy there, the serial killer. And I'm talking to the detectives there, and they're saying, "How many murders you have?" And I told them, about, how many we have, 75, 80 a year. And they're like, "Are you kidding me? That's nothing." But see, they're doing all gangbangs and shit. I said, "We don't have quantity, but we have quality." And then they came out here and they're like, "You're right. You guys do have all this weird shit, Yeah.
What, and I know you probably get asked this too, and there's plenty to choose from, I'm sure. But is there one that sticks out that it was just really bizarre kind of a homicide? I know there's probably more than one. Believe me.
There is more than one. I got to think about it. But I mean, the strangers through the window, doing weird shit and that kind of stuff. Yeah. God, I can't think of right now off the top of my head a really weird one, but maybe it's because I'm so used to it. It didn't seem that weird anymore. Yeah.
And I heard you talking on another, I think it was Jared's podcast, and I'm interested about this. Was there a time, and I don't know if this still exists or not, but they would make you talk to a psychologist after was that
only my first murder? The very first one I was primary on when I first came into homicide was the murder of a 7-year-old little girl. And And the chief of police that time was a real touchy-feely guy that came up from San Diego. And he said, I want everybody to go talk to the psychologist. And he set us up for like Saturday morning at 8 o'clock. Well, Friday night, we got the tip. I always say a murder is like a set of dominoes. Once that first one tips, they all fall into place. And if you don't have the right one, they'll stop, right?
Yeah.
So we got this. And we're working, my partner and I are working all night long on this murder. And then we're done. We got the guys in jail. We're going to go to, we want to go home, but we got to go to this stupid meeting. So I walk into this room. There's everybody sitting in a circle, and this guy with a beard and glasses. And he says to me, how do you feel about being involved in this case? And I said, you'll excuse my French here. I said, if I have to come to see a guy like you every time something like this happens, I'm in the wrong fucking job and I need to change my career. And I got up and walked out. And that was true. If it bothers you that much, don't come to Homicide. You got to be able to brush that stuff off your back. Not that I didn't have empathy for the victim or the victim's mother and all that. Of course I did. But it's not going to affect me psychologically. Come on.
Right.
In a life. This guy, of course, had no clue.
Yeah. No. So that you said that was the first time and only time. So did that just that was it?
That was it. That was my first murder where I had case responsibility, and that was it. That never happened again.
Well, that's good. Yeah. So you went from there and you basically you go and you're doing that thing. You were doing that thing that basically where you're looking at cases from Oregon, Washington, Idaho, Montana,
right.
that region.
Yeah.
The thing I'm interested about is this thing, and if you can talk about it. And hang on, I want to ask you. Hey, let me ask you about one. Kurt Cobain.
Oh yeah,
I'm sure you've been asked about that a million times.
Well, let me tell you about Kurt Cobain. I was sitting in the office when that call came in, and they picked up the phone and they said Kurt Cobain was found dead in his house, and everybody, all the homicide detectives there, the sergeant, and me, all said, "Who?" Nobody knew who Kurt Cobain was. Never even heard of him. So I didn't go to the scene, but I have since reviewed the evidence and stuff, and I've met with the medical examiner and talked about it. This is 1,000% a suicide. He used a semi-automatic shotgun. Well, first of all, if you're going to, I tell people, if you want to kill Kurt Cobain, you're not going to put a shotgun in his mouth and pull the trigger. You're going to hot shot him with heroin, because no one would blink twice of him dying of a heroin overdose. No one would even think anything of it. But he used a semi. Well, first of all, he called a cab that afternoon, got in the cab. The cab driver recognized him, drove downtown to a gun shop, bought the shotgun ammunition with his own credit card, came back, got in there, and the guy took him back to his house. And then he was using a semi-automatic shotgun. So it means when you pull the trigger, it ejects the casing automatically, and the next one gets fed in. His hand was wrapped around the shotgun like this, with his hand covering the port. When they pulled the trigger, his hand was scorched from the port. The flames coming out the port to eject the round. I mean, you'd have to wrap his hand around that port, and why would you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, so what you're almost describing is a little bit of cadaveric spasm.
Yeah, really? Well, that's exactly what it was, because his hand was still in the trigger, and there was cadaveric spasm. His hand was still in the trigger and on the grip part of the stock, and then he'd done that and burned himself. He did, I remember what's his name. He was the medical examiner in Pittsburgh. He just died last year. I've met him a few times. I can't think of his name. He was always on TV. He could not have, with that much, he's gone on TV, said, with that much heroin on board, because he shot up right before that.
Oh, I remember that.
He could not have possibly done that. Well, the thing he forgot.
Are you talking about basically the guy that might have talked about it in Soaked in Bleach, which was that documentary in reference to that?
It's funny, but I'll tell you about that too. So, you're right. If he was a normal guy did that, it would have knocked him out. But Kurt Cobain had been a heroin user for years. He had a high tolerance. And I think he did that because he was afraid it might hurt, just to do that. But, speaking of Soaked in Bleach, Vern Geberth, who is... I've met him. Yeah, he wrote Practical Homicide Investigation. He's a friend of mine. And I told him, that was my mistake. I was writing Impractical Homicide Investigation. Anyway, he calls me up on my cell phone one day. He goes, hey, these people want me to to do an interview about Kurt Cobain, and for a documentary. What should I do? I said, Vern, take their money, take their money. And so he did, and he got on there, and he was so pissed because he told me what he told him, that it was clearly a suicide, but they edited it to make it look like he was saying it wasn't. And he posted all kinds of stuff online, how this is BS. They edited his comments to make it sound different than what he said. But yeah. I mean, here's the other thing. This guy, Tom Grant, he'd been on LA County Sheriff's for like 2 years as a patrol deputy.
Okay, I know you're talking about.
What expertise does he have to decide this is a homicide? Mm-hmm. He has none. He has none. He's just, I don't know why he left the sheriff's office after 2 years. I'm guessing he probably got fired, but I don't know for sure. But, who is this guy? What experience does he have to say? I sat with a medical examiner one time because it was coming up. He was a chief criminal medical examiner. He's a friend of mine in Seattle. And that's what he said about Cyril Wecht. He goes, well, experienced medical examiners know that if you're a heroin user, you'll have a much higher tolerance. Then that's why these people die of heroin overdoses. They're using heroin every day, then decide they're going to get treatment. So they stop for like 6 weeks. And then after 6 weeks, they get the urge and go back and use the same dose they did before. Well, their tolerances come down. So when they do that, they overdose and die. That's the problem. And so he had a tolerance, and there's no 1,000% chance. By the way, I don't know if people know, Kurt's head was intact. He used birdshot. And you can look at the x-rays. His head was full of birdshot, but it didn't blow his head off, shooting himself in the mouth with a shotgun. It was all intact.
Explain to the listeners what cadaveric spasm is.
Well, sometimes at the time of death, your hands will grip like that, and they'll stay like that after death. That's your spasm, and especially with gunshots and things like that.
It's like an instantaneous rigor mortis of the trigger finger. It doesn't happen all the time.
With gunshots, usually to the brain. But yeah. That's what
fascinating. I'm fascinating. The way they put that soaked in bleach together, of course you sit there and you're just like,
Yeah, well, they want you to think.
That's I know.
That's what I tell people. Call me and say, like, are you watching The Making of a Murderer? I go, no, I don't watch that shit. And they said, what do you think? I said, I think the producers that make that are trying to only showing the stuff that'll make you believe what they want you to believe.
Yeah,
they're not telling you the whole story. The other one's the stairwell. The stairwell. Oh my God.
No, the staircase. No, it's the staircase. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. That one. Yeah. I
mean, that was clearly.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'm really glad that you talked about that case. Do you think that there's more victims from Gary Ridgway, or do you think he basically?
Oh, I'm sure there are. Yeah, absolutely.
Really?
Yeah. He only confessed to the ones in King County because they told him they wouldn't give him the death penalty. We know he did ones in Pierce County, but he only showed. He's only stayed. He did not stay. Ironically, Ridgway lived like 4 miles from where I am right now, down the road. And I had friends that lived across the street from him. I didn't even realize at the time. But he absolutely did more than the ones he's been charged with or convicted of.
In watching him talk, I guess that would be a reason why he wouldn't want to talk about it if another county would probably not honor that. But I think that, just looking at him and, of course I'm getting the limited stuff, but he seems like somebody that you could actually go and just talk to him.
Yeah. He's actually, he's low IQ. He's got like a 75 IQ. Actually, some people from Hits did go to interview him a few months ago, and he was very open about his murders to them. Yeah. At least the ones he was convicted of.
Interesting. So that's really interesting stuff. Yeah. Now let's talk a little bit about BTK if you're allowed to. Are you allowed to talk about it at all? I probably. If you can't talk about something specifically, that's great.
No. But I was asked to be on that. Not much has happened lately. There was some stuff happened early, but I haven't heard much lately. So I'm not sure what's going on with that.
Well, I know that there's that Oklahoma case that that supposedly I know Osage County, they were talking about a lot. They had some underwear that was buried or whatever.
The one that started this.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's how I got involved. Actually, it was Cheryl McCullum that asked me to get involved. Yeah.
Really? All right. Yeah. It's a fascinating. The thing about him to me, though, he just seems to me, and I could be wrong completely. I don't know all the ins and outs like you do on this stuff, but to me, he seems like the type of a killer that likes to take credit for his kills.
Yeah, he does. Although although he might be worried that he get the death penalty about another one or something. I don't know. Well, Catherine Ramsland, who's another friend of mine, interviewed.
She's coming on October the 17th.
Catherine. We were supposed to do a thing together in Missouri in September, but I had to cancel because of a medical issue. But yeah, she interviewed what's his name? My mind just blanked.
Oh, Dennis Rader.
Rader for months, and then wrote a book about it. And like she's the one to ask about BTK because she and I have talked about it. I said, and because the sheriff there, he was doing an interview with him. He's trying to get him to feel sorry for the family. He doesn't feel sorry for the family. He was just jerking them around because he is a cold-blooded psychopath. That's the thing. He would walk down the street on his street and with his daughter, and there'd be a neighbor there. Hey, how you doing? Oh, hi. And then later that night, he went back and murdered her. He was,
He's a unique. Well, I wouldn't say he's completely unique, but he is a little bit weird, different.
Actually,
I know
another friend of mine was involved in the investigation, Kelly Otis at Wichita, and we talked about that. And, they got him because he said, "Well, if I send you a floppy disk, can you tell me?" No, can't tell anything. Of course, I can get the metadata. They had his login name and everything. I thought you said, "Oh, sorry, we lied."
Yeah, I know that I've had Gil Carrillo on here. He's a friend of mine, and Gil Carrillo from the Night Stalker, and I know that the Richard Ramirez was a really unique type of a serial killer because he really didn't have any boundaries, man. I mean, he would molest little boys, he would rape old ladies, he would kill. It didn't matter.
He didn't have a type. He
he liked Asians, but aside from that, I mean, he really just kind of went all over the place. So for the most part, in your experience. I don't know. Let's talk about your books real quick. Cause I don't want to miss that. Matter of fact, I've got one on the way. I bought one of them. I got the one behind the tape that's coming here. So tell us a little bit about what we get out of these books. If we were to go out and buy them.
Well, that was my first book. And it was basically everybody, I'd go somewhere with non-cops, like my wife's friends, and we go out and they'd say, "What'd you do at work today?" And I'd tell them, and I'm just talking about a work day, and they're like staring at me with their jaw open. "You should write a book." My wife kept saying, "You should write a book." So just before I retired, I have a binder. It's here somewhere.
Yeah, hopefully it's there. I want you to show that because I saw you.
Is this it? Yeah, this is it. This is one page in this binder is a case I've worked on, and it goes and they're divided by years. The unit secretary kind of put this together for me at the time, but it's, every single page is a different murder I worked on. And it's like, this thick. And so I just pulled that out and I started flipping through them. Oh, I remember this case. And I just thought, I'll just start writing about a couple cases. And I did, but then I kept going more and more and more. Next thing I knew, I had a book, so I went, shit. So I went and of course you have to edit it and all this other crap. And finally I published it. And it sold quite a bit. I remember the first time when it first opened on Amazon's list of bestsellers, it showed my book, one of Wambaugh's book, Truman Capote's in Cold Blood. Wow. And I actually, later on in life, got to know Joe Wambaugh. He just passed away a few months ago. I went to his funeral down in Palm Desert. But so it's about what I consider the more interesting cases. You won't find much about gangbang cases in there. There's one, and it's only interesting because we had this guy. It was a gangbang case, nothing special about it, but we figured out who this guy was and we arrested him, and we had barely enough to arrest him. We didn't really have enough for we need to get some more stuff before we go to trial on this guy. So I had this prolific snitch that when he was in jail, people would tell him about murders they committed, and he would call me and tell me, and I'd get him and give a statement. Well, this guy, because he was a juvenile, my guy was in a downtown King County jail. There's another King County jail out in the suburbs, and it's an adult jail too, but they send all juveniles there also because they have a special section, down there. So my guy was in custody in downtown. I called the jail and I said, his name, send Greg down to RJC, and I want you to put him near this guy. Okay. And I get a call from Greg from the jail about half hour later. They're sending me to RJC. I said, really? He goes, did you do that? And I said, why would I do that? And he's going over and over. I don't know why they're sending me to RJC. That stands for Regional Justice Center. See, I couldn't tell him about it because he'd make him my agent, and anything he found out.
That's right. That's right.
So I just played dumb, and they sent him to RJC. The suspect's name was Master. Puts him in RJC. I said, put him in the cell next to this guy, because Greg was always in isolation because he'd get in fights. He looked like this mafioso, but he was like a puppy dog to me. He'd call me, and he gave up like 10 or 15 murders for me. But anyway, he goes, hey, this guy Master tells me he killed somebody. I'll be right down. That's he never went to trial. Yeah.
I had one of those too that would call me constantly, and I was like, dude, I was like, I don't know. I don't even know if I can use you anymore, man. You've told me about so many.
The thing is, when we used to say, if your phone rings and you pick it up, and it says you have a collect call from an inmate at the King County Jail, accept the charges.
Oh my God, yes.
Two things can happen. One of them, somebody's got to rat off somebody else, or number two, it's your suspect wants to talk to you about it.
Yeah, you're right.
I get people, we can't take collect calls. Well, that's bullshit.
Yeah. I get calls all the time. I get them from prison.
Oh yeah, me too.
All the time.
I still get calls from prison. But But I remember teaching the class, and this guy says, well, our department won't let us accept a collect call. Are you kidding me? This is a murder. I mean,
It's so stupid.
It's like
so stupid.
Our interrogation rooms are pretty good. You know what? There's no smoking in our building. If I'm interrogating a guy and he asks for a cigarette, I'm giving him a cigarette.
Yeah, me too.
I don't smoke. It kills me. But
I used to. And I'll tell you what, I will break that rule. If you need to break that rule.
Who cares about what the rules are?
No,
Who cares?
I could care less about that. If they want to smoke, hey man, I just need a cigarette. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Here you go.
We'll get you one.
We had cartons of cigarettes in the interrogation room area and matches in case they asked that. And then we give them.
Yeah.
Especially if they're in custody in jail, because you can't smoke in jail and they're dying. So yeah. You want a cigarette? Right. Sure. Yeah.
Hey, the second book that you wrote, let's throw that up there, Amanda. It's the one about the serial killer.
Right.
So what's this about?
Well, what happened? First of all, I'll tell you how I ended up writing it. I'm working at the AG's office, and I get a call from a publisher. Hey, you wrote that other book, and it's selling really well. We're looking for older true crime stories, And I just heard about this case like a week before. I'd never heard about it, and I went, yeah. And so she had me fill out a proposal, and I filled it out, and she said, write the book. So I did. And this is a much shorter book. It's only like 100. They only wanted 125 pages or something, and like 50 photographs. It's about this 19-year-old who just south of the city in the late 60s, early 70s was walking. He would walk through the woods, and if he came across somebody, he'd kill him. And he killed 2 teenage girls and 2 8 or 9-year-old boys. And it's a terrible story, but that's the thing. Yeah. He's still in jail. And some people went and interviewed him. He's not happy about the book. Oh, gee.
Yeah. Just to mention to the listeners, he had mentioned Joseph Wamba. The Onion Fields is a great book. I highly recommend it. It's a great one. And he wrote several others and stuff. Wasn't he a cop in LA? Wasn't he an LA cop?
He was, for like 12 years. And then he had to leave when he started getting popular as an author. And he also was an executive producer of Police Story. And he did the Choir Boys, the New Centurions.
That's right.
And all these, they made movies of him, and he made zillions of dollars.
Yeah, there's a book called Choir Boys too. Yeah, he wrote a book on that one as well.
We always, when I talked about him, he says, the Choir Boys, the movie The Choir Boys, not to be confused with the book I wrote of the same name, because he did not like the movie. He was pissed, because it's kind of like some fraternity yuck up thing, and that's not what it was about at all. Mm-hmm. But he wrote a lot of books and did real well, and I got to know him because he was looking for somebody. His grandson was playing football at University of Washington. He was looking for a Seattle guy to do because his grandson wanted to do an internship, and he called me up. I remember I was at my office and my phone rang. I said, and this Homicide Detective Steiger, he goes, is this Cloyd? I go, yeah. Who's this? He goes, Joe Wamba. I said, no, who is this really? I read his books. I read The New Centurion when I was like 15. And that really got me wanting to be a cop. But
I got to tell you a quick story. So years ago, before I became a cop, I wanted to do a book report for college. I wanted to blow up some pictures from Helter Skelter.
Oh yeah.
And I remember they were like, I went into Kinko's, and a lot of people don't even know what Kinko's is anymore. But I went into Kinko's, and they're like, "Yeah, you can't do that. You gotta have a copyright release." And I was like, "Well, what is that?
I'm
and how
not
do I
publishing
come?"
it. I'm just going to do a presentation.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I actually I called the publisher, and they said no. And so I don't give up that easy. So I knew Vincent Bugliosi was a lawyer in Los Angeles, and so I just called his law office, and I'll be darned, he called me, and I remember when he called me, and we ended up having a conversation for like 20 minutes, and he didn't want to talk about. He goes, and I remember telling him, I was like, listen, this isn't to make any money on this, I promise you. And he's like, oh, I don't care if you do, man. Good for you if you do. But he was really cool, and he wanted to talk about his book called Outraged, which was about the O.J. Simpson case.
I read that book. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I always have regretted that I never called him, because he's one of the reasons that I mean, that book, of course, is the reason I wanted to be a homicide detective.
Yeah, I read that book too.
And when I lived in Los Angeles, the Hillside Stranglers were running around, and Kenneth Bianchi's spending time up in Walla Walla now still.
I've actually got, I was called by a producer one time because they were doing a documentary on Bianchi. And he said, hey, do you think, this is the guy I'd dealt with him before. And he goes, we want to get the videos of his interrogations and stuff in the file. Do you think if you called, the Bellingham is a city that's happening, it's about 120 miles north of me. You think if you called, you could get them for us? I said, I'll try. I called him up and I said, hey, tell him who I was. I said, yeah, I'm looking to get this. And they said, well, let me call you back. And a minute later, he called me back. He goes, I looked you up, man. Oh, yeah, you can have everything. So he sent me. Yeah, he sent me everything. I kept the copy on my computer.
That's cool.
Tapes, yeah. And all that.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Well, so we're getting close to the end here. What would be your advice for somebody that, is sitting back and they have dreamt of being a homicide detective one day? What would be your advice to that person as to how to get there?
My first advice would be don't do it in Washington. But you just got to, first of all, you got to become a police officer first. You got to do your time of patrol, but you want to do just a little more than is expected of you, so people pay attention to you. And if don't slip off when you if you get a detective job. I remember when I got a job as a precinct detective, there were a bunch of people passing the paper from this file to that file because they're all old guys just riding out the day job. I was out kicking down doors, getting search warrants and shit, and they're like, what is, I remember walking in one time and goes, hey, I got a search warrant. I need to have a couple guys go with me. And one of the old detectives, you have what? A search warrant. He goes, can I see it? And I showed it. He'd never seen one. And he goes, how'd you get that? I wrote an affidavit, took it to the judge. Excuse me. And they were shocked. But that's what you got to do, those type of things. Don't be a paper pusher. Don't do the minimum you can. Do more than is expected of you. And you'll get a reputation of being a good cop. And that's how you get these jobs. I
say that all the time. I mean, it's do more. When I speak a lot too. You still speak? You still go all over the place?
Yeah, I do. I was supposed to speak in next week in Missouri, but I had to cancel that too. So I'm gonna do it next year. But Catherine Ramsland gets me a lot of things. She calls me up.
Really?
She goes, she tells these people, gotta call Cloyd. And so they do, she's yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, I'm on the committee for the Homicide Investigators of Texas, and so we'll definitely keep you in mind for down the line for sure. Yeah. I would love to have you there. So that's good advice, Cloyd. I actually agree with you 100%. I'd add to that a little bit and say, if you want to be in the homicide unit, show up to homicides.
That's right. Yeah, and when you're there, I used to, when I was patrol officer, I worked in a bad area. But there were we'd have homicides, and I would rush there and be the primary officer. I remember the old homicide sergeant goes, "We're going to get a cup for you in homicide, put with your name on it because you're always the guy that's here." Yeah, well, I ended up later working with him. But yeah, that's it. I gotta
and do a good report.
Yeah, do good reports. You got to write well. Yeah, you got. Yeah. Don't when you're writing, don't write in police jargon. Write in English.
Yeah, yeah. Those are good things, man. Yeah. I'll tell you what, Cloyd. You're somebody I look up to in this business, and even though I've been doing this forever, I say forever, nothing like what you did, but I've been doing it for 16 plus years.
You only got about 14, a few more to go.
I know. I'll tell you what, they took
me there.
Yeah, they told me recently. They said, well, it was probably about a year ago. My boss did all the statistics, and I guess I'm number 3 all time for the lead on homicides in Tulsa. For Tulsa, just the homicides. And you had said, I think I heard you say one thing. I just came to my mind that the numbers of murders that you had back in the day was a lot more than it is today. Is that right?
Well,
maybe
it was then. And then it dipped, but it came back up in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are they still doing a pretty good job at solving most of them?
Yeah, I don't know. Year before last, they set a record for the most homicides in a year in Seattle. Yeah.
Really? What was that number? Do you know?
It was like 85 or something. I forgot. And it was
okay.
Yeah. I don't know.
So we might have comparable numbers as Seattle,
maybe.
Actually.
Yeah. I don't see. The thing people ask me about, I know like 2 people that are in homicide still. Everybody else is new because it's all been rotated out. So I know the commander.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, it's fascinating. I could talk to you for hours, Cloyd. Really, one of the guests said something about we need to have you come back. Maybe we will. If you have some additional cases that you want to come, man, you're welcome anytime, Cloyd.
If you read the book, if you find cases, mark them down, or you can ask me about it.
I will. Then let's do that because I've got that book. As a matter of fact, I'm really disappointed it didn't show up already because it's supposed to be here any day. It's probably going to be here tomorrow. But listen, Cloyd, and there's a third book that I didn't put a picture. Is there a third book that you wrote too?
Well, there's a third book that's like 80% done. I haven't read it. Okay. It hasn't been published yet. Yeah.
Okay. But listen, man, I really do appreciate you. I have mad respect for you guys are like the people I look up to, in this world. And you've been there and done it, and you were extremely successful at it. Like I said, there's a lot of similarities between me and you both. I've been teaching interview and interrogation and death investigations for years, here to all the academy classes and throughout wherever. But man, I'll tell you what, I think this is an epic show. I think you giving us your time. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, if you get a chance, check out the websites. Amanda, throw his website up again. That's a place that it talks about his book. Feel free to go there. And I think you do private investigation. Do you still do that? Do you still do that?
Yeah, I don't do. I want to tell you right now, I don't do fidelity cases or any of that crap. Mostly I do death investigation. People have, I get my brother, they said it was an overdose or an accident, but I know it was murder, and I review those cases. Or, I haven't seen my brother in 20 years. Can you find him? Yeah, I can find him. Those type of cases. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, and just because he's up there in the Seattle area doesn't mean he can't work for you anywhere. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
I get death cases from all over the country. People have death cases and they want to, I know this was murder, but they say it wasn't. But I got to tell you up front, before you waste your money, they almost always are what the medical examiner said they were.
Yeah. Hey, what's the level of cooperation from police departments throughout the country?
It's okay. I mean, I don't do a lot of direct contact with them. They're not going to release a case file of an unsolved case to me, as general. But as far as talking to them, I've never had a problem. If they find out if I tell them who I am or things, and so I don't have a problem.
Well, all right. Hey, Cloyd, if you ever have plans to go interview some serial killer in the future and you need somebody to carry your bag, let me know.
All right.
I think that'd be fascinating. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, read his books, check them out. And if you needed to talk to him about a loved one's case that you felt, I mean, I'm sure that there's definitely a cost with it. And if you're looking for an expert witness and you happen to be somebody that's, I know he does that too. He does that too. Stuff, yeah. So he's definitely somebody that has been there and done it and has a tremendous amount of experience. Ladies and gentlemen, I can't thank you all enough for being here. This isn't, I say this a lot, this is not a show without you. And I appreciate those that have liked and subscribed. Subscribe. Listen, it takes you about 0.3 seconds to do it, and it helps the algorithm. And that's why I keep asking you. And we want to have as many viewers as possible here. And check us out. Make sure that you follow me on my YouTube page, Detective Jason White, and I've also got a Facebook page, Detective Jason White, and an Instagram. So you can check me out there, Twitter, all of it. I'm basically all over that stuff. And listen, Cloyd, you're one of the small group of people. If there was a Mount Rushmore of homicide detectives, you're probably arguably going to be on it. So thank you for being here, buddy. Really, it means the world.
Thanks for having me.
Stick around for a minute. Don't click off when we get out of here. Next week, I'm actually speaking in California. So we are not going to have a live episode, but I'm going to have an episode that's going to be on here. And actually it's going to be Shannon Coolness from Gwinnett County. It's kind of like a First 48. Where are they now? She doesn't work there at Gwinnett County any longer, but you've seen her on the First 48. And so I thought it'd be fun to have her on there. It's a lot of fun. It's a fun episode. She'll be on there next week, October the 10th. So check it out. And we'll drop that at 7 p.m. next Friday. And until then, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for being here. Have a safe week. Take us out, Amanda.